तत्परम्पर्याय विद्महे ज्ञानलिङ्गेश्वराय धीमहि तन्नो गुरुः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ योगमहर्षि डॉक्टर स्वामी गीतानंद गिरि गुरु महाराज की जय। Namaste, Namaskaram, Vanakkam, Swagatam. Welcome to yet another Saturday morning where we are presenting our scintillating Saturdays. The last week has been quite a challenge and even more than usual, okay? We always have challenges and a bit more than usual, so have been struggling to keep up. But when you're in trouble in the ocean, just keep treading water, till you regain your energy and then start swimming again. So I think I'm in the treading water phase this last week. One of the topics that has been coming up a lot again and again, and I've been having so many people write to me about it, is the topic of what is known as cultural appropriation or cultural misappropriation and its relevance in the field of yoga. Now, since the late 1960s, when my father came to Pondicherry, settled down here permanently, developed the Anand Ashram at Lospet. Initially it was in town, then Lospet, then the Sri Kambli Swami Madam, and Amma joined him. Since the very beginning, countless students from all over the world have been part of our yoga family. And I grew up in the ashram with lot of exposure to Westerners coming from different parts of the world to stay and study with my father and mother for 6 months. Some of them extending the study for 1 year and some of them staying on for 2 years or so. And then as I grew up, I saw these students who had become teachers, then taking yoga to different parts of the world. And often when they used to write back to Swamiji, they used to write back to Ammaji. And in recent times, they write back to me as the present lineage holder and ashram acharya. When they write back, I think there's been a common thread that has been running over the last 5-6 decades, and the main common thread was the struggle to take yoga in its holistic cultural context and share it with people in other parts of the world where this cultural context either doesn't exist or may be looked upon with suspicion or looked down upon as being primate. So they have struggled, and each one of our students who went through the ashram, because for us, we are not a cookie factor. We are not a factory making cookies. Our Anand Ashram is definitely not a cookie cutting factory that all cookies come out the same size and shape. Each individual who comes through the ashram grows into who they can be and manifests who they are to the best of their ability, and then continues to grow on that trajectory that is of the individuals alone. You are on your own trajectory, you are on your own path, so there's no comparison. But I think a common thread that Swamiji used to talk about, Ammaji has talked about, and now I am facing with my interactions with the students, is that on one side, they want to keep what they have learned in the ashram alive in their teachings in their own countries. So the question comes, in the ashram, you get up in the morning, you do an arati, and you have all these deities. You have Ganesha, you have Muruga, you have Saraswati, Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati. You have the Guru, and you have this morning arati you do. You go up and sit on the deck for the morning meditative, contemplative sitting. You do the Hatha Yoga. You do the Karma Yoga and the ashram. You then do the Raja Yoga relaxation and pranayama mid-noon. In the afternoon, the Yoga Chikitsa or the mantra, the yantra, etc. And in the evening, that satsanga, the music, the bhajans, the Sanskrit. And on Sundays, going to Kamli Swami Madam, being part of the ceremonies done for the spiritual lineage, the Guru Parampara. Seeing the work we do with the young children, with the yoga, dance and music, and giving them a cultural infusion. So the student, when they are trained and they go back to their country, they say, how can I replicate this? How can I bring this alive in my environment? And I would say, without an exception, everybody struggles. Everybody struggles because you are going back to a culture where value may not be put on what is valued here. And value may be put on what is not valued here. So we have seen the struggle people have had. And again, going back and struggling with the different religious perspectives that are there, the local, cultural, societal perspectives that are there. And this has been something I have seen over a long time. Now, this has been very organic. This growth I have seen is very organic. And yet on another side, I have seen an inorganic development where people sort of come to India for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, get a yoga certification from somebody who's affiliated to some Yoga Alliance or whatever organization. There are so many organizations who will affiliate you. They go back and suddenly they become the expert. And you have this person who says, I was in India, I studied in India. And when you talk to them, when you interact with them, and when you observe them, you start to wonder, were they really in India, or was it just the body that stayed in India while the rest of them was not in India at all? So what you start to find is these people who suddenly, come, they take yoga as a commodity and start selling it. And then you find people either go to two sides. One is take everything that is India and Sanskrit out of it. Sanitized yoga. I don't know why they even call it yoga. Sanitized yoga, which is basically as good as any fitness regime. And then the other is suddenly they start this studio where you have all these colorful bed sheets and blankets they brought back from India. And you have Ganesha everywhere, Durga everywhere, Shiva everywhere. And people have no idea what is on that sheet. It may be the Gayatri mantra that has been written there. Om Bhur Bhuvaswa Tat Savitur Bharenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om. The primordial, most important sacred Gayatri is written on a sheet, and it has been put on the floor as a decorative piece because they have no idea what is written there. A very beautiful image of Ganesha is found as a tablecloth. So you see, what happens is you have one extreme, which is where people go off and it's totally sanitized ayoga yoga, de-yoga yoga. And then you have this other side without without realizing what these cultural symbologies are. All these cultural symbologies are put up as if they are showpieces. Now, both of these are creating an issue. Both of these are creating an issue because they have gone to the extremes. And yoga lies in balance. And I think this is the type of thing that happens where, tattoos. Oh my God. And that is something that seriously, I see that the thing is, one has to understand every culture. What is the meaning of the word culture? Culture means something which is a living tradition of a society that has been developed so that that society can grow. You want the society to grow, culturing. For example, if you are working with, gardens, it's called horticulture. If you are working with crops, it's called agriculture. If you are working in, worms, it's, periculture or something, sericulture, periculture. You have all this culture, right? Even in microbiology, we culture. We do a culture of your blood, of your semen, of your urine, of your stool, of whatever, to see what is the microorganism growing in it. Culture means to grow. So every culture, especially ancient cultures, it doesn't matter which part of the world they came from. Asia, India, South America, South Africa. All the ancient cultures have had amazing teachings in them, and I respect them greatly. Now, the advantage of India, or the disadvantage, is it is a living culture. And this really confuses many Indologists who would like to put India in a box in a museum and study it. So when they come here and they see it's a living museum, India is a living museum. Our culture is living, thriving, and constantly evolving even today. Now, you won't see that if you go to the 5-star hotels. People who come to India and they do, I went for a 2-week tour to India. Yeah, I'm now a yogi. And they stayed in 5-star hotels and they had one of those modern keep fit gym yoga instructors come and teach them a few asanas in the morning, in the afternoon, and the rest of it was sightseeing, the Taj Mahal and Qutub Minar, and go up to Mussoorie and seriously, I tell you. What has happened? This type of misrepresentation of the culture, where you find people using yoga either without the Sanskrit or creating new names. The up donkey, down donkey. Up donkey, down donkey. Why not? When you have an up dog and down dog. I have great antipathy to up dog and down dog. And the reason is, when any sound is used in Sanskrit, the original sound, it has a certain vibration that gets altered when you translate it. And hence, even if we take what people call as the up dog, what we need to understand is that Adho Mukha. Adho means downward, Mukha face, Shvana is dog asana. Even if you keep that. Now, we in our tradition call it the Meru asana, the mountain posture. Some people call it Parvatasana. We don't call it the dog. But even considering that, I just want to put this in the context for you. How things have got mutilated. How they have got mutated and mutilated. Adho Mukha Shvanasana. Just see the flow there. Adho Mukha Shvanasana. It has a beautiful, poetic, melodious vibration. Adho Mukha Shvanasana. And then it gets translated. Downward facing dog. You can just see Adho Mukha Shvanasana, downward facing dog. You can see how immediately it's as if you're abusing somebody straight away. Downward facing dog. Adho Mukha Shvanasana. You're blessing someone. There's a huge difference in the vibration. Now, even if people at least said, let's go into the downward facing dog, it wouldn't seem so bad. But I've been in sessions and conferences where the instructors are yelling at the top of the voice, down dog, up dog, down dog, up dog. and all these hundreds of participants, just like a dog, are going down and up. It is insulting. It is insulting to the core of humanity. So what I'm putting forth here is that one has to understand that there is a living culture which is constantly evolving, transforming, and yoga is an integral part of this culture. When you try to take yoga out of the culture, you have the body but not the soul. It is like a dead dolphin that has no use. Okay? Now on the other side, you have this glorification of symbols that are sacred and are being misused and misrepresented without an iota of understanding. Someone picked it up in a market in Delhi or in Varanasi. You paid $2,000 for something which should have cost, like $20. And because, the guys know how to market things in Varanasi and Rishikesh. All these tourist places, they really know how to get your money out of you. So you paid $2,000 for something, and so, you think, oh my God, I have to put it. And so, you go to a yoga studio, and in the entry point, the front of the yoga studio, you have this Nataraja, dancing Shiva. Now, you know what? The Nataraja is not a statue to be put in your lobby just to show that, oh yeah, there is something, I'm connected to yoga and I'm connected to India. That is the problem. They don't understand who Nataraja is. It's just a nice statue they picked up someplace, paid a couple of $1,000s for, and then anybody who comes in who understands what is Nataraja and the sacredness naturally will get offended. They say, that's not where you put it. Now, you know what? I'm not just blaming the Westerners. You go to any Indian 5-star hotel in India, and in the lobby they'll have a huge Nataraja. A Nataraja statue that should have been put in a temple and worship is put in this, goddamn lobby of that 5-star hotel where people with their shoes and, drunk and, smoking, and they just go, hey, look at this nice statue here. Indian 5-star hotels. Cultural misappropriation by Indian 5-star hotels. So don't think it is exclusive. Don't think it is exclusive to only what is happening in the West. Again, we have an issue here. You have lot of sincere Westerners who adore Indian culture. They start to love the culture. They get very deep into it. I would say a majority of our students are like that. They stay here, they get exposed to the culture, they love it, they love wearing saris, they love dressing up in the Indian clothes because it feels good. Not because, hey, this is a new fashion trend wearing Indian clothes. No. If you are doing it for that, it is cultural misappropriation. If you are just wearing it and say, hey, this is a nice, Indian style fashion trend, to hell with you. It's cultural misappropriation. But when a Westerner loves the Indian culture, says, I want to dress up in this, and they feel good about it, they start to realize, wearing a sari is an art. A sari wearing is an art. And many of our students have mastered it so well because they love it. They love the feel of it. They are not doing it to look good. They are not doing it for a Instagram photo to put and get a few more followers. They are doing because they love the culture. They respect the culture. They appreciate the culture. They adore the culture. So there is cultural appreciation, adoration, love, respect. And we Indians here, we love such people. We love people who love our culture and understand it with the depth. One of the finest books on Tantra, The Serpent Power, Arthur Avalon, Sir John Woodruff, was one such Westerner who came to India, fell in love with the Indian culture, learned Sanskrit, started going into the depths of the Tantric texts. He was a judge in, I believe, the Calcutta High Court. And he used to wear the Indian clothes even to the High Court in those days. Imagine what the fellow judges thought of him. He became what those teachings were. He loved them so much. And we respect it. We respect someone like that. Nobody in any sense would ever say there is cultural misappropriation by someone like that. But you have people who just wear Indian clothes to look good so that they fit into the yoga scene. People who, have all these embellishments. You have this whole set of Rudraksha malas and all these embellishments that they put on just to look good, like dressing up for a fancy dress party. That is cultural misappropriation. People who take the teachings without credit to the source, that is cultural misrepresentation. I'll give you an example. In academia, when I am writing a research paper, I will go and I'll try to find out who has done what has been done. I will collect all this information, and when I write that paper and I take statements from different people, different authors who have worked before me, I put all of that work together and I cite them properly. So and so said such and such, and then in the references or bibliography, I will be giving their paper or the book or the chapter. And when I write my academic paper, I have cited the reference and the context in which I am using their work. And this is absolute integrity, academic integrity. Now say I take somebody's published work, I just put it as if it is my work. Okay? So I take somebody's work and I put it as if it is my work, and I don't even mention the name. I don't even mention the reference. I don't even cite it. This is academic dishonesty and academic theft, intellectual property theft. Academic theft, academic dishonesty, academic and intellectual property theft. Same thing with the culture. When you have respect for the culture, when you are using the cultural symbols or the cultural context and you are giving proper reference, you are respecting it, you are quoting it, you are appreciating it, and you are using it as it is meant to be used, it is culturally appropriate. The term I would say there is, it is culturally appropriate yoga. Let's change the way people debate this. Cultural appropriation and misappropriation. Appropriate means everything is as it should be. Culturally appropriate yoga is what we need. We need to understand it. Not take something and then say this is mine, package it. That is the digestion of yoga. And many people, the reason this whole debate has come up, this whole topic has come up is because many people take practices, repackage it, and there is no reference to the source at all. And suddenly you find a trademark, a copyright coming up with all these things. Now I think we need to understand that we from India, the yoga masters from India, have also played a big role in this whole issue. Because when they went to the West, instead of saying this is what yoga is, let's keep it relevant to the context, they started modifying it to suit whatever would get them the audience they needed. And so what happened, it started to get diluted into something so far away from yoga that today we are struggling. And if you retrace the roots of it, much of it, the blame rests on some of the great yoga masters who went to the West. And instead of standing up for what yoga is, they kept on saying, okay, you want to do it that way? Okay, we'll do it that way. You want to do it this way, that. You don't want to call it this? Okay, fine, no problem. Okay, no issues. As long as you come to my class, you do it. And this has created this whole mutation that we find today. And so people who have trained, even with legitimate masters, we have ended up with this type of total mutation occurring in the name of adaptation. So on one side you have those who have totally tried to take India and Sanskrit out of it. Sanskrit is not just a language. Sanskrit is a vibration. And when the yoga terms are used in the Sanskrit, that Samskrita Bhashya, it has a certain vibration. Now, when I say yoga, yoga has a certain vibration. Now, if I just translate it and say union, that word union doesn't have the same vibration that the word yoga has. When I say asana, it has a certain vibration that has behind that vibration infinite meanings and associations. When I say pose, it doesn't have that at all. When I say Nataraja, it has infinite connotations. When I say the dancer pose, it has none of those connotations. So one side is, diverse yoga from everything that is yoga and just keep the body. The second is glamorize and use sacred symbols and sacred concepts without understanding what they are or where they are appropriate. Now, just coming and studying in India doesn't mean that anybody's actually got anything out of it, okay? So people could have stayed in India for 7 years. I remember a singer, very popular Western singer who specializes in, singing for Indian songs and all. And I was at a festival in Milan some years ago. And he and his band were singing, good musicians, lovely music. But they announced he had stayed in Varanasi for 7 years and studied in the traditional method. So I was like, okay, interesting to see what this guy has to offer. And he announces, and now we are going to sing for Shiva! And everybody's like, whoa, wiggling the other end of the spinal cord. And then he starts off, Sarva Mangala Mangalye. And I'm like, oh my God. This is a song. This is a song, a mantra for Mother Goddess, not for Shiva. Sarva Mangala Mangalye Shive Sarvartha Sadike. This guy didn't even understand that the Shiva in that refers to the consort of Shiva, that is Shakti. This guy was taking a mantra for Mother Goddess and announcing, I'm singing for Shiva, and claimed he stayed 7 years in India in Varanasi learning the culture. I'm like, he was smoking weed for most of the time. That is misappropriation. That is misrepresentation, and that is what hurts. Not someone with pure heart, respect for the culture, wanting to know more about the culture of yoga, understanding the fertile Indian culture from which yoga has sprouted and which is sustaining, nourishing the growth and transformation of yoga even these days. Someone who wishes to understand that culture, who has humility, love for the culture, adoration for the culture, appreciation for the culture. It is cultural love, cultural adoration, cultural respect, cultural appreciation that is valued by anybody who has any brain cells working. Now, you know what? This debate has become so strong that many people in the West think that just because they are Indian or Indian origin, that they can do anything they want and it will be culturally appropriate. Now see, I already told you, Indian 5-star hotels are doing the cultural misappropriation by the way they use the sacred symbols. So what is happening is there is a lot of misrepresentation and misappropriation. That has to be fought, that has to be pointed out, that has to be brought to the front, and that has to be worked on, because it is wrong. It is wrong to take somebody's thousands of years old culture and just try to sell it as if, you are the first one who has invented it. You are not the first one, okay? And you will not be the last one also. Because this is timeless. Sanatana Dharma is timeless. But Just because somebody is white doesn't mean that immediately you can say, oh, you are having cultural misappropriation of yoga just because they're white. No. This is we have to be very careful, because there are huge smear campaigns being done against legitimate people who love the culture. There are people who love the culture, who adore the culture, who follow the culture, who live yoga. And just because they're white doesn't mean you can say, oh, you are misappropriating, because it boils down to that age-old duality, us versus them. This is not a white versus black or white versus brown or anything like that. It is about, are you valuing something? Are you respecting something? Are you using it as it is meant to be used? What my father would say is, everything is there for your use. And he said, yoga is the science of right useness. Right useness. Using everything as it should be used, which is righteousness, which is dharma. So be in tune with dharma by doing the right thing. Using things as they are to be used in the proper context. And then it is absolute culturally appropriate yoga. But when it is out of context, when it is taken out of context, it does become misappropriation. But again, as I said, never think this is about Indian versus non-Indian, white versus brown, white versus black, Hindu versus others. No. Because this culture, Sanatana Dharma, is a culture that blesses everyone. This is a culture that blesses the pure heart. The most important component for yoga is a pure heart. Because if purity, Saucha is not there, Maharishi Patanjali so beautifully tells us, it is this, such an amazing teaching, Maharishi Patanjali, he says, you stop getting caught up with the other person's body. Swanga jukupsa parairat samsargaha. You are not worried whether the other person is white, black, green, blue, pink, tall, short. That doesn't matter to you anymore, because you have elevated yourself in saucha of purity. You are witnessing the divine manifesting in the other. There is no duality. There is purity. What a beautiful concept of that saucha is coming. And he says, you then manifest cheerfulness, saumanasya. You start to have one-pointedness, ekagraya. You start to master the senses, indriya jaya. And you become fit to witness the self. Atma darshana yogyatvanicha. What beautiful teachings Maharishi Patanjali has given us. What beautiful teachings he's saying. It is based on saucha, purity. Are you a Vishuddhatma? Are you a pure soul? Vishuddhatma. Are you someone who can manifest that purity and transcend bodily limitations, bodily hang-ups, by saying, oh, you are white, you are black, you are tall, you are skinny, you have 6 fingers, you have 6 toes, you don't have 1 leg. Huh? Your pancreas doesn't work, your brain doesn't work, your heart doesn't work. No! You have transcended the bodily limitations. You have gone swanga jugupsa paraira samsargaha. You have started to connect with each person, each living being. You are connecting with them as a human being. You are respecting them for the divine that manifests through them. The divine that is coming through them is the divine that you are bowing to. The divine in you is bowing to the divine in them, because you have got established in that purity. I know so many people who come from other cultures, who have understood the Indian culture, the culture of yoga. They have understood the context of yoga. They respect the culture, they respect yoga, and they try to practice it and teach it and share it with respect to the culture. This is culturally appropriate yoga. Culturally appropriate yoga. But then if someone is just trying to steal something, that is when it is misappropriation. Theft. Steya. Steya is appropriation, misappropriation. You have not earned it. You are not worthy for it. But when you work on yourself, when you love it, when you respect it, when you value it, at that point, you start to become worthy of it. You have the yogyata. And at that point, just because you are different than someone else, nobody should ever, never should ever you let anybody say that you are misappropriating yoga. Misappropriating yoga comes when credit is not given to the source, when it is not presented in the context, when the person is not living the teachings and is just, showcasing something for the sake of, packaging. When culture is used as a packaging tool to sell your body-based practice, well, then it is misappropriation. But when you respect a culture, when you start to understand the context, definitely it is very, very appropriate. I just felt the need to address this topic because again and again this comes up. And I have students who are Indians, I have students who are non-Indians. And what you find is that you find people who love yoga, who live yoga across the globe. Because yoga, the teachings of yoga are universal at the highest level. And this is why when we start to come into that spirit of yoga, let yoga live through you. Every breath should be a breath of yoga. And don't worry about, the barking dogs, as Vivekananda used to say. The elephant walking through the marketplace doesn't bother with the barking dogs. I think you have to think about this because it is so important because there are always going to be people to criticize you. There are always going to be people to criticize you. I have my own share of people who criticize me. And fine, they are enabling me to see a perspective I would not see otherwise. So let us acknowledge the perspective. Whenever there is another perspective, we acknowledge it. You listen to it. You contemplate it. You see whether there is some truth in that perspective and find that truth and try to reflect on it. And if change has to come, let it come from within. But if somebody is criticizing just for the sake of marketing and somebody is criticizing just for the sake of, pulling you down and because they are jealous, there's a lot of jealousy in yoga land. And the easiest way is to say, okay, what does she stand out for? What does he stand out for? What can I poke them about? When you are true to yoga, I think the most important here is integrity, fidelity, and commitment to yoga. Integrity, fidelity, and commitment to yoga is of prime importance. When you have that integrity, fidelity, and commitment to yoga, and you have love and respect for the culture, it is totally culturally appropriate yoga. I hope that this will enable many of you to take a stand on this. When people are misappropriating it, when they are misrepresenting it, let us call them out. Let them know. Let us try to help people change for the better. But just because you don't like somebody or their competitor, their yoga studios, the competition down the street, don't misuse this cultural misappropriation tag. It's like the Me Too tag being misused by people. It is a big problem, but it's also being misused. Cultural misappropriation is a big problem, but it's also being misused. And this is why we have to understand that. Let us get to the root. The root is yoga. Yoga is universal. Yoga is thriving, nourished by the culture, Sanatana Dharma. Love the culture, love yoga, live yoga, and let that manifest in every cell of your existence. That is my blessing for today. thank you so much for being with me. And thank you for suggesting this topic because I always wonder about it and then I say, no, someone has to say the things I have to say. I have been put in this position by the universe. My father and mother have brought me up 49 years plus 9 months in yoga. I have been given the cultural background, I have been given the tools, I have been given the education, I have been given the opportunity to reach all of you. And if I do not follow my dharma, if I do not do what is right and support those who are trying to do the right thing, mudita punya, as Maharishi says, it is so important. And so by you being on the other side of the screen, you are helping me fulfill my dharma, my swadharma. So thank you, infinite gratitude to all of you. Dhanyavadaha, danke, mercy, grazie, nandri, vanakkam.